Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast. This week, we have Peter back on with us from Vancouver Rent It. We're actually going to go through a bunch of FAQ, the frequently asked questions. So we did have some people email us in and ask a couple of questions. So I figured we'll ask another guy from the industry what he thinks as well, and we'll go and get down to that. And so welcome back to the show. It's been a while, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate you having me back, and always happy to answer some questions that I get all the time. And
right?
It's when we say frequently asked questions, it's frequently.
Absolutely.
It's always the same questions. So
Absolutely.
might as well put them all together into a nice little podcast. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Sure. I got all these ones here. The first one that come from Jamil is how do I screen potential tenants effectively? So what are some of your methods? How are you going to rile through everyone's stuff?
Yeah, well, it honestly all starts with even the initial email.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually pretty obvious if somebody sends a nice email about themselves. Hey, this is me. This is my partner. I work in this industry. Blah, blah, blah. They send a nice email about themselves, and it's has all this information without us even asking. That's already a great start.
You mean not like the Facebook, is this available?
Yeah, the is this available kills me. Yeah. So
why?
Them just providing some information right off the bat is great.
Yeah.
During the actual showing of the property, yes, they're looking at the space, but I'm also looking at them to make sure that everything looks good. And you can usually tell within a couple minutes of meeting somebody if you like them or not, or if they're a nice person,
which is something that people have to take into consideration. Like, you're going to be in bed with these guys for a minimum of a year.
For sure.
Right? Like, if you don't get along at the start,
yeah,
it's going to be a long year, man.
Yeah, if the person comes off abrasive or maybe too needy, as in that, asking a bunch of questions about, can we change this? Can we change that? Can we, upgrade the floors, change the blinds out? Some of that's okay, but if it's, we're not going to renovate the entire unit on your behalf, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely not. Right?
It's all kind of that all adds up to make like a good picture of somebody. And then, of course, we have our online application, which asks a bunch of different questions about, finances and current employment and their current landlord and stuff like that. But, that in and of itself, if I just see the application and I haven't met the person, it's kind of hard to get a good read on it.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when they ask for a discount right at the start. Like, you haven't seen this place yet. Why are we lowering it down? You don't even know why.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help. So I think, all of their communication from the start to the finish kind of all adds up to make a kind of picture of somebody. Because at the end of the day, during the showing, you're only meeting them for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, the more information you have, whether it be your communications through Facebook or over email, that, is important as well.
Now, some landlords get a little bit sketchy about the international students coming in, because there's no credit check and all that stuff. And, if you're going to try to pursue any damages, it's a lot harder to go and pursue them from wherever the home country is. What are your thoughts? Like, is it good to rent to students, like, even without being able to do the credit check? Because a lot of them don't have credit in Canada. Or, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I've had great international students. I've also had less great international students.
Yeah.
But I've also had great tenants who are Canadian, and I've had less great tenants who are Canadian. It doesn't really seem necessarily like it's a bad choice.
Yeah.
Often they come in with lots of money in the bank, which
that's the one for me that I always find is that most of the time I wouldn't suspect that a family is going to send their offspring to a different country and render them homeless
with no money. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't quite make sense. I usually personally feel pretty comfortable about it, and to be honest, most of the owners that I work with usually feel pretty comfortable with it as well.
Yeah.
Bad tenants can be Canadian as well.
So, absolutely.
Yeah. And what your point about being able to collect from them, honestly, it's pretty hard to collect from people who live in Canada.
Fair enough.
Who are, somebody who lives right next door to the unit's still pretty tough to collect from them. That, right? Another country does maybe add another layer, but
not much.
Not much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess it's a good way to go through. Now, with credit checks we just touched on, do you think they're the end all be all, or?
Definitely not the end all be all. So what I do is, we don't do credit checks initially, obviously, because you can't just credit check everybody kind of broadly. Some owners ask
real quick.
Yeah, exactly. It also costs like $25 or $30 each time. So what we do is we just wait until we've kind of shortlisted maybe 1 or 2 applicants, and then those applicants, once the owner's pretty happy with them and says, "Oh, I'd just like to see a credit check just to make sure." It's kind of just like one extra little, confirmation that everything's all good. To be honest, though, I've received credit checks from people that were, moderate or mediocre, and the owner still goes, it seems fine. Right? but at the same time, I've also had clients who've like looked into like the full credit report and been like, oh, it looks like they've got, a bit of an expensive car or something like that, stuff like that, and kind of gone above and beyond in that sense. So some people kind of definitely take it much more seriously. Some people kind of look at the number and go, it's high enough.
Close enough. Let's go,
anything over 600 is good, or whatever it is, right? So, I personally, I don't think credit checks completely define somebody.
Especially because they're not tied in. Like, you can be late on your rent all the time and still have awesome credit because they don't report to each other.
Exactly. So, that is actually a really good point. Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of sad though, because you'd think like if somebody's paying, let's say, an average of $3,000 a month in Vancouver.
Be nice to be able to put.
Why would that not help your credit score?
So there is I actually received a request from a tenant recently. And there's this company, I can't remember the name, Rentvoo or Rent. Or something like
your credit card.
Where you can use your credit card, and I think you have to pay them like a percentage, like they obviously, that company obviously takes a very small percentage to do this. But I think if you have rewards on your credit card or cash back, that can kind of like offset it to the point where it's basically free.
And then builds up your
credit. So I've actually seen some tenants do that. Basically, you just pay that company and then they e-transfer your landlord the rent, which is kind of interesting.
It's a good way to go about it. I mean, I think that it would be better for tenants, to be perfectly honest, to help build your credit.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, because it is a big payment that you do every month, guaranteed, and just pay it off right away. So I think that would be helpful.
So we had another question that came in from Sherry, and hers was, what are my responsibilities as a landlord? So what on a very high overview, obviously there's a lot of things, right?
It could be a lot of things. That's probably referring mostly to maintenance stuff, I'd imagine. I do get landlords sometimes that go, the fridge is broken. The tenant must have broken the fridge. Like, find it hard to believe that the tenant could break the fridge. If it's physically broken, like the handle's completely ripped off because they were jamming on it or something. But if the compressor is broken, I mean, the tenant probably didn't go in and
just leave the fridge open all day
and break the compressor somehow. I actually had an owner go. He said, they probably were putting hot food in the fridge, and that's what broke it. I said, I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's possible unless they were putting like
boiling water or something,
thermite in it, or something, something really hot, like something crazy in there, some chemicals or something. I said, it is the landlord's responsibility to fix the appliances that are listed in the lease.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the landlord's responsibility to fix other stuff that that's part of the unit. What's the landlord's not responsibility is to change light bulbs.
Yes,
that's one of them. We do
get those ones that kills me.
We do get that request from tenants quite often. They say, "Hey, the 3 light bulbs are burnt out."
That's great. Dollar Store's across the street, brother.
On the light bulb thing, I do usually give tenants like a week or so of leeway when they first move in. I say, hey, if any of the light bulbs burn out in the first week,
that's a fair enough way to
replace them, and I'll reimburse you for the $4 for the light bulb, because it kind of seems unfair if you move into a place and these light bulbs are supposed to last 500,000 hours, and you move in and 2 hours later they're burnt out. So I usually give tenants like a week. But other than like consumable stuff, like think batteries, for stuff. Although batteries for the smoke detector, whose responsibility is that? Probably the landlord.
That is the landlord,
because that's 100%. Fire stuff,
fire safety. So you have to do that.
It's honestly, I think it's pretty rare. Maybe something else that would not be the landlord's responsibility would be like the water filter in the fridge.
That one doesn't come up too often. At least I haven't had that too often. One of the ones though that I do have to touch in on though is, yes, the landlord is responsible for pest control.
Oh yeah.
The amount of times that I have to have this conversation with landlords, and they're like, well, what are they doing in there? I was like, well, your place is located near a river, so there's gonna be mice and rats and stuff like that. Like they were there before your building was.
Yeah.
So
the building was built on top of where the mice lived.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're into their home, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So that is one of those ones that comes up, obviously within reason though, because you have to check in on the tenant, make sure they're not leaving a bunch of food stuff everywhere, because then you're going to have the never ending story.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to like a little bit of column A, column B, but overall, like the initial hit, the very first one is just call the pest control and they will take care of it, because they'll tell you when they get there, oh, this was out or this is causing or whatever it may be. And then now you've got a third party that can answer what's causing this, right?
The other one that sometimes I have a little bit of conflict with is drain cloggage.
Yeah, that one comes up a lot.
That one comes up quite frequently. And like, I get it. Some buildings could be potentially built improperly and they could have backups and the pipes are too small for, and all this stuff. And there's the standoffs are in the wrong place. There's all these different plumbing stuff, that, things that could weigh into it. But when the plumber goes in and, hey, there's a huge clog of hair in the drain and, here it costs you $400. Sometimes the owner might go, why am I paying for that? It's not my hair that's in the drain. So that one can be a tricky one. Yeah. Sometimes these things are hard to diagnose and kind of hard to say it's your fault or it's your responsibility. Right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I generally would say the rule of thumb is to do the first one.
Yeah.
And then if there's a second call out for the same problem, like, okay, guys, like, I mean, but you can get those little hair trap things. That
I've recommended those to a bunch of people. Like after the first one, I've said, okay, we pulled out huge clog of hair. We'll pay for this one. Buy a 30-cent hair trap,
right?
Put it in the drain. And hopefully it won't happen again.
Yeah, for sure. We get that definitely sorted. This one comes in from Leo. It's a pretty simple one, actually. How much can I raise the rent by? So, what is the maximum this year? Test time, man.
This year was 3.5%.
Yep.
And then next year is going to be 3%. I believe. Yes.
You correct.
There you go.
Look at you go.
Good.
So Leo, you can raise your rent once per year, and it is by the maximum allowed per the government's choice. So it's 3% this upcoming year, 2025. And you do need to give notice for that. Do you remember?
3 full calendar months.
There you go. 3 full calendar months.
It's funny. I always get a lot of clients who reach out like on the last day of the fixed term 1 year and they go, hey, the lease expires tomorrow. Did you send the rent increase? And I go, yes, we did. But we did it
3 months ago,
like 3.5 months ago, so that it will be effective for tomorrow. So it's kind of those cases where it might lead into possibly one of our later questions about why would you hire a property manager? Because we know this kind of thing and can take care of it for you, and you won't get a surprise when you
don't know things.
When you reach out to the tenant and say, "Hey, your rent's going up tomorrow," and they go, "It's actually not." Yeah.
All right.
So yes, 3%. In between tenants, you can raise the rent by as much as you'd like, or as much as the market will bear.
More accurate.
But there's technically no limit. But in between, every 1 year you can raise the rent.
Yeah.
By whatever the government says, you can raise the rent.
Yeah. And that's used to be 2% plus inflation, but now it's just inflation.
Yeah, they kind of just come up with a new number every year.
Yeah. It's hard to figure out what
it is. Hard to figure out what sort of formula they're using.
I don't think they know what formula they're using.
I think they just kind of choose a number that hopefully will be popular for everybody. But
so the one that we did have from Sarah, I can read my own writing. Sarah wrote in and said, "How do I handle repairs and maintenance requests?" Kind of ties into what we were just talking about, pest control and stuff. So, what is the best way to go about this?
Yeah, you usually receive an email, hopefully from the tenant, with some information about what's happening. To be honest, I get a lot of emails that just say, "This is broken." So I usually kind of reply and say, "Hey, why don't you give me some more information? Why don't you take a picture of the issue, maybe a video if possible. Even maybe if you want to give me a call, and it might be easier just to explain the problem, just so that I can kind of figure out who the best person to send is, or sometimes I can even just troubleshoot, with the tenant themselves, just all over the phone.
Yeah.
And then send an appropriate person to fix it, if that's going to be yourself, and make sure that, as a landlord or as a handyman, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because
and even then, I'd suggest you should still just hire somebody, because insurance, especially anything to do with water.
electricity. Yeah.
Any of these things like water.
If it's fixing like a lock on a door or something like that, and you probably take care of it yourself. But if it's anything, especially anything with water, for sure.
Especially if you're in an apartment. If you're dealing with water and you're in an apartment, just pay the extra money. Get an actual plumber who's ticketed, who has insurance, so that way if you do something wrong and take out 6 floors below you, someone's insured. Whereas
if you did it yourself,
you're going to be very unhappy when the insurance company calls and says, who did this?
Yeah.
And you go, it was me.
Yeah. So we do get lots of questions about like, who do you use for stuff? We literally use like the same guys every time who I trust and have done so much work for me. Same plumbing company who's fantastic. Same handyman who's fantastic. Same electrician, blah, blah. Same guys who know what they're doing and are licensed and insured and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And if they make a mistake, which to be honest, basically never happens, but if they ever did,
they're covered.
It's all covered and totally fine.
Absolutely. So, and if you're listening, if you need any of these connections for plumbers or electricians and whatnot, just call one of us and we'll tell you
100%.
No problem. See, it's no skin off our back.
Whenever any of my friends or family members ask like, do you have a plumber? Yes, I do. And I trust them so much. And I use them like once a week or once every 2 weeks for the last 5 years. So definitely it's good to have those people on hand. And
it's be good for like the DIY landlords should try to find somebody ahead of time too, because it's not fun when you need a plumber right now and you're calling around trying to price check and all this stuff. Like, just take the time to build your like little compendium if you're taking care of your own place, just so that you're ready to go in case something happens.
It's a really good point, especially because if the water issue pops up on December 24th, you don't want to be calling around a bunch of different places. You just want to have a guy who you can call, and that guy will help. That guy will help you out. Now it's on December 24th. It'll probably cost you more.
Yeah, absolutely. And generally, things do always break on the holidays. I don't know why.
Yeah, honestly, heating stuff always over Christmas holidays, water stuff. I mean, it's obviously going to snow or something like that can contribute to it. I had a roof leak on December 24th, not last year, but the year before, and dealt with it accordingly. And luckily I had a roofing company that I'd used before and gave them a call. Great, and yes, instead of calling around like 500 different places that I'm sure were also busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So now with that, one of the questions that we received here from Gav was, what rights do I have, if any, if I need to enter the property? The renter property.
It's a good question. You can enter the property pretty much whenever you like.
Yeah, with notice.
With notice.
Yes.
You don't necessarily have to have a specific reason. The reason can be an inspection. Mm-hmm. I think maybe you're allowed to do one per month, a maximum, I think, if there's no kind of real good reason. And as an inspection, that might just be a guideline.
Yeah, you're allowed to do them once a month if you want. But, I mean, that would drive most tenants completely insane.
In my opinion, definitely unnecessary. I have had some clients who, for insurance purposes, need to do it every 3 months.
Yeah, that also seems a little excessive.
It does seem a little excessive to me, especially because there's like a regular adult living in the unit anyways.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, I'd understand maybe if the unit was going to be empty, but I've done 3-month inspections kind of on a regular basis, or 4-month inspections kind of quarterly for clients who have insurance requirements.
Yeah.
But yes, just send over the notice through the proper method. Do you note that there's actually 3 days though? That's one of the things that people hold the 24-hour notice, but it's more like 72. Unless you hand it to them directly, correct. I guess.
In which case you're already there. And most of the time you're like, just
right. Yes, because whenever you serve notice or serve any sort of notice to any tenant, it needs to be quote unquote received by them. And it takes 3 days by most methods, 5 days by mail. By mail.
Yeah, 5 by mail, 3 by putting it on the front door.
Putting it on the front door, or 3 by email as well, I believe.
As long as you have the email service.
As long as you got RTB 51, I think it is.
That's the one. I went off on that for a long time.
51.
But so I mean, you do have to wait for those 3 days still. The thing that's interesting with that is that when you're giving the notice, a lot of times tenants get very upset by it. I find the first time. But if you just use that paradigm shift and say like, hey, I'm not checking up on you.
Yeah.
I'm checking up on the unit. And so like when you go there be doing that, checking on the unit, obviously. I mean, you're going to notice if your tenant's high on crack or something. But like when you're going in there, ask the tenant, hey, is there something I wouldn't know unless I lived here? Is there a light switch that gives you a little buzz when you use it, or a loose, annoying handle or something? Do you mean like
I always chat with them conversationally?
Yeah,
because I mean, most of them I like, as a somebody that I know, I've met them. I met them, a year ago or 6 months ago or whenever it was, and I'm going and saying hi. Oh, how you doing? How's everything going? Blah blah blah.
Exactly.
And it's, as a do-it-yourself landlord, 100%. I would recommend also having a good kind of at least some sort of positive relationship with your with your tenant, as well. Sometimes tenants won't. I'll have landlords call me and they'll say, "Hey, I've had a tenant for 6 years. They've been great. They've never called me one time." Mm-hmm. And that's great, but like there might be things that are wrong with the unit that they just don't mention, or they don't know to mention, or maybe they don't want to bother you. And then at the end of the tenancy, you go in for the first time in 6 years because you haven't done any inspections, and you go, "Oh my God, there's like $20,000 worth of updates and maintenance to do because the tenant never said anything." And maybe the tenant didn't realize that these things were broken. They just went, I don't want to bother them. Maybe they didn't know what to look for. Yeah. Maybe they were just too lazy to message you and didn't want you coming into their space.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's sort of like the thing that you hear about all these horror stories with pets. Mm-hmm. Oh, the dog did this and pee all over the carpets and chewed up the walls and all that stuff. This didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing your checks throughout the tenancy, it's kind of your own fault for not being there and, doing the job of property manager.
It definitely makes sense to pop in every now and then with proper notice.
Yeah, proper notice.
Yeah, just want to make sure.
Don't get in trouble.
Yeah, you don't just pop in. Just go in with proper notice. Ideally when the tenant's there, so you can say hi and ask them how they're doing. And honestly, a lot of the time I'll go in to a unit and the tenant will go, actually, there was something that came up a couple weeks ago, but I just never mentioned it. Yeah. And then sometimes it's nothing, and I go, we'll fix it, or we don't need to fix it, or whatever it is. It's just good to know.
And that's one of those other things that is an integral part. Fix it.
Yeah.
Don't go do an inspection, learn that something's busted, and then leave it.
Yeah.
Because it's just dumb. And if you show that you care about the place, the tenant will care about the place. It's just like why on transit they wash off the graffiti, because they want to show, otherwise they'll just keep on stacking up. I mean,
100%.
So it's like, if you show that you care, they'll care. That's sort of the way.
It's a two-way street.
Absolutely, which is actually kind of funny. It ties into one of the questions here was, how can I attract reliable tenants? That's part of it. Yeah. Have your stuff up to date, have your stuff clean, have your, all these things all combine to show that you care.
Yeah. Just by caring a little bit and then showing that you care makes a lot of sense. Like even during showings, sometimes I'll be doing a showing for a property that's vacant and the owner's just given me the keys. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh, I've still got all my paint cans all over the place, and that ladder, I'll take care of that later," and all this stuff. Yeah. It's not the best look. I totally understand that, maybe you're still got some work to do, but even putting it away in a closet would be better. I've walked into units that the owner said, "Oh, it's all ready to go for showings." It's not quite ready to go. And then, the tenants go, but maybe the tenant who doesn't care as much, the worst tenant, might go in and be like, "Oh, this is fine. Looks like my place at home."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, but the people who go, who have higher standards, might pass it over. So
yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, if you care a little bit, they'll care, and it's just a circle of everybody caring.
Just a good juju out in the world, man. So yeah, there's that great. As well as right now, we're in a bit of a slow. It's always slow from October to about January. It's always a slow market.
Yeah.
So this is when that caring part works. And I mean, one of the ways to attract reliable tenants as well, if you're taking photos on your phone, turn it sideways. We're not on TikTok. Sideways.
100%.
Like a picture.
I never trust when the owner says, "Oh no, I've got some photos you can use."
Oh yeah.
No way. No way. Get me into the unit. I'm doing my own photos.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a professional photographer. Well, maybe if you're a professional photographer, maybe we'll let you have them. But 90% of the time, 99% of the time, my photos are going to be better.
Yeah.
So let me do it.
Which is also one of the things is for professional photographers, they're not that expensive. Like, if you got a really nice place that you just painted it, you're between tenants, all that, go spend the $150 or whatever.
It's actually very cheap. Yeah, not even $200. I've done entire houses for like under $200.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of these photography places offer extra stuff now, such as Matterport walkthroughs and virtual walkthroughs and stuff like
floor
this.
plans and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, for this one-time hit, you've got the virtual tour, you've got these professional photos that have been all touched up and look pristine, and a floor plan and all this stuff. Like, these are all assets that you can use.
And you can use
to re-rent them.
And you can use it over and over again. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like, barring if you change, like, if you paint your wall suddenly up from white to green, of course, probably new photos.
New photos.
But most of the time you don't.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. To be honest, I don't use professional photos that often, but anytime I have a property that's like, over $4,000 maybe or something, over $5,000, then yeah, I'll say to the owner, 100%, let's do photos.
Oh, yeah.
We should definitely do it, and it'll be well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's not very expensive. So.
Well, yeah, and especially for the DIY owners, because this way they can keep that asset to re-rent it each time. Also, take the photos empty is one of the other things, because the amount of times you get the people, is it furnished? No, it says in large bold letters, not furnished.
Yeah.
One may add. But do that up. So, yeah, it's just simple things that you can do to make sure that you're set up for the future and that. And I think that a lot of DIY landlords need to just invest in little things like that.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I totally understand that some people, they contact me and they say, hey, like 5 years ago, we had no problems at renting out the property at all, ever, with like the worst photos ever.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. Because the market was just good at that time. At that particular, it was the middle of July, probably. Like and that it was the perfect time, right? But now it's November in an already bit of a down year. Mm-hmm. It's the market's not great right now, so we shouldn't use your terrible photos.
Yeah,
and maybe we should clean the place up a bit or whatever we need to do. So
absolutely. So who's the next one here? Sarah has asked, "Do I need landlord insurance?" What do you think? I don't
even think we need to talk about this one. It should just be a yes, a resounding yes. 100%. By landlord insurance, you just need your homeowner's insurance, and then you need to call whoever provides your insurance and let them know that you're not going to be residing there anymore if you were before, and that it's going to be tenanted, and they'll change the appropriate things in your policy. But 100%, you need homeowner's insurance if you own the house and live in it, if you own it and rent it out, if you own it and it's vacant, whatever. You need to have it. The second you purchase a property, go get insurance right away. Yeah. One thing to note is if it's for a stratified property, make sure that you check out what the strata deductibles are for water and earthquake and fire and all that stuff, and then make sure that yours line up with that appropriately.
Yeah.
An insurance professional will be able to
very easily
be very helpful in that regard. So,
and that's one of those other ones too. Like, you see these really cheap insurance things, you can do it yourself, a couple clicks and you're all sorted out, whatever. The amount of times that I've seen that backfire because like you're not an insurance professional,
and you just buy like the cheapest one, and then you realize that you're not, the strata deductible's $200,000 for water damage, and you've only purchased $50,000. Well, that's a lot of money in between that's not covered. So
absolutely right.
It's always good idea to check with an insurance professional. You don't need to pay them extra money to do it. It is slightly less convenient because you have to either call somebody or go somewhere, but. Than doing it online, but I would recommend doing it. So.
It also is nice too with using the insurance professionals because they usually keep a CRM of you as well. So I'm not always thinking about my insurance, but all of a sudden someone will call me up a month ahead and be like, "Hey,
when it's up for renewal.
Renewal's coming up.
Exactly.
What do you want to do?" I'm like, thanks, man, because I totally would have missed it.
Just like ICBC does. Yeah. ICBC sends me a big notice months in advance, and I would have 100% missed it if they didn't tell me.
But the way the cops will tell you, though.
Yeah,
they'll definitely tell you.
Exactly. It's funny that like it's mandatory to have car insurance. You have to have car insurance.
Yeah.
But do you have to have homeowner's insurance?
You should.
You should. Yes, you 100% should. Sarah, you should. 100%.
Yes. No, I didn't bother writing down the guy's name because I know it was a troll question, but we're going to answer it anyways. Why would I waste my money hiring a property manager?
Yeah.
Why would you waste your money?
Well, the question itself is flawed because it's not a waste. But there's a bunch of reasons. I mean, a lot of the reasons we've already talked about. We kind of know all this stuff already. So all of these people, the people who are asking questions, it's awesome that they're asking them, but we've got all the answers. We know all this stuff already.
A lot of it.
A lot of it. Yeah, sometimes you have to look something up, but about the rent increases, we do that automatically way ahead of time so that you don't wake up one day and think, oh, it's been 3 years since I've increased the rent. Why is the rental rate so below market? Well,
it's also really interesting because I noticed that when there's changes to the rules, they're kind of quietly done. Mm-hmm. Like as a property manager, we check in at the RTB and that to see what rules have come out and changed, but they always seem to just do them quietly.
Yeah.
And then if you're a do-it-yourself landlord and you're not checking this all the time, you don't know. Mm-hmm. I just ran into one today actually, where the fellow didn't realize that a fixed term lease doesn't actually terminate; it just turns into a month to month. And he's like, "Well, how long has that been?" I'm like, 4 years?
Longer, since 2017.
2017 is it? Man, time goes. COVID changed time.
Exactly.
Everything was 2 years
since
ago.
2017. Yeah.
So it's been like this for a long time, but it just is like quietly changed. And a lot of people, they just
I think maybe people, maybe they don't know, but I think maybe they just want it to be like that.
Yeah.
That's what they want in their heart. They want it to be that you can just do whatever, but
I mean, unfortunately, like I understand why they changed it because a lot of like landlords were trying to get around the maximum increase by just kicking
people out every year.
You're not signing this? We'll beat it, right?
Yeah, that one's that one's unsurprising. But other things that have changed, the 2-month notice does not exist anymore. It's now a 3-month notice if you're selling and a 4-month notice if you're not selling but moving in. It is complicated. There is some complicated stuff that you need to kind of keep up with,
and especially when they changed these 2 and 3 month notices because they had come out for it, didn't bother talking to anyone in the industry, of course. And then had to roll that back within 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. And it's like, guys, this is very confusing for people who are not in it.
It is a lot of changes to keep up with. Something else that we already talked about as well. A property manager is kind of like an insurance policy. You don't always need the insurance. You don't smash your car every single week and need the insurance. But the one time that you do, it's really nice to have that insurance.
Absolutely.
And it's just like a property manager. Is there going to be a water leak every single week?
Hopefully
not. That would be horrible. However, on December 24th, when you're in Mexico with your family and your property manager can just deal with all that stuff on your behalf, it's quite nice. Instead of you calling, from Cabo, plumbing companies and trying to sort it out from there, your property manager's already taken care of it.
Exactly.
That's kind of the insurance policy right there. So.
Absolutely. I think also with dealing with a licensed manager, like we have seen stuff. Like granted, you have your rental unit or maybe like, let's say 3 rental units, but I'm currently carrying 78. So I see this stuff over and over and over. I don't know what numbers you're at right now.
Yeah, similar numbers. Exactly. It's like
getting up there. It's like, I deal with this. I fix at least 5 sinks a month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's like, we just have experience. And so to answer the question, why would you hire a property manager? Simply for the fact that like you have a job.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you don't want to have a second job.
Exactly. 100%. This is my full-time job.
Yeah.
Is dealing with all these properties. So, you might have a full-time job and as a landlord, and you might not want to deal with, the full-time job of being a landlord. Now,
absolutely.
Is it a full-time job if you've got one property? No. But do you really want to come home from your 9 to 5 or whatever and have more work to do?
Yeah, probably not. So. This question came in from one of our listeners. He sent in quite a few questions before, named Michael. And it's one of the most debated amongst property managers of all. Should I rent a house top and bottom units separately with a tenant? So they're saying, if you get a detached house, do you rent them separately or just as one unit? What are your thoughts on this? Because there's 2 camps.
Honestly, it really, really depends. I have had success renting out the top and the bottom. Oh, yeah. If somebody were to ask me and money was no object, just rent it out altogether. It's easier. You only got one family in there. It's more desirable for people. So they're higher quality tenants probably will be interested in a full house. Because to be honest, these days, I feel like it's kind of rare. I rented out a full house in North Van and all the people who came to view were like, oh my God, I'm so happy that that
there's a house.
This is just a house and there's no tenant downstairs. This is great. This is so rare. We're super interested. So there was a lot of interest based on that.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to get more money if you split it up into two.
Absolutely.
Probably, almost 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But
the tricky part with that, I find, though, is you have to pay attention to who you're renting to. Like if you've got a family with 2 toddlers running around upstairs and then somebody who works graveyard shift, you're for sure going to have a conflict.
It's not going to work. Yeah. Yeah. You really have to worry more about like the conflicts between the people. It's not really like conflict between you and the tenants. It's conflict between the tenants themselves.
Yeah.
So that is, I would say that like I probably have 5 or 6 houses that are kind of all divided up like that. I spend way more time dealing with those than I do any of the other stuff. Yeah. So if you are a DIY landlord and you have a little bit of time on your hands, but not too much, and you're thinking it's going to be a lot easier for, a bit of extra money, it's not that much easier, or it's much easier to just rent it to one family and just deal with it like that. Also, I've seen some pretty horrible setups where it's, sure, there's a kitchenette in the basement, but it's not really set up like that.
Yeah, sort of like an afterthought.
It's an afterthought, exactly. Then it's not the best scenario. There's also a lot of additional things to think about. Garbage cans. What happens when one tenant just starts piling a ton of garbage up in the garbage can? Right. Well, now you have to buy 2 separate garbage cans.
Yeah.
And that goes
deal with the city on that.
And deal with the city on that. Yeah. There's lots of things that people don't necessarily think, but what about the mail? What happens because they're not going to necessarily, if it's an illegal suite,
which most of them are.
The mail guy's just going to put it at the front. He's not going to go around to the back and put it in the little mailbox that you put up. So you have to think about that. Utility splits. That's another one. It's super rare that the utilities are going to be split with 2 separate meters. It's super rare. Yeah. I've only had a couple of people.
It's a very rare one. And you essentially just have to split them. Usually it's 50-50 providing that it's not.
Yeah, you do 50-50 or 60-40 or 70-30 or whatever it is but do you base it on the number of people? Do you base it on the size of the unit? Sometimes there's different heating and kind of, there's a furnace, but then there's also electric baseboards and you're splitting Fortis BC and you're splitting BC Hydro. Yeah. One other thing that's come up frequently that is kind of difficult is who pays for it. So technically the law is that the landlord pays for it and then the tenants pay them. But that is an additional thing that you have to, every single month you have to reach out to the tenants and collect the money for the utilities. Whereas if it's just one tenant in there, tenant just pays for the utilities, you're done.
You sort it out.
Done with it. So it takes a lot more setup and to do it properly. Yeah. I would definitely, if you don't think if the money, the difference is not astronomical, rent it to one family. So much easier. Yeah. Way less headache, more desirable.
And even to the point that I find that renting it to one family, if they many times will ask, oh, can I rent out the suite, essentially sublet it. As long as you do that correctly, it actually makes more sense because that way they're selecting someone that they like, that they're going to get along with. It's usually, I find when they do it, it's a friend of the family or extended family.
That's actually not bad. I haven't. I'm learning something today. That's good. I haven't really come across that or thought that.
And we assist them with it. Like they'll say, "Oh, I want to rent to this person." I'm like, great. Tell them to fill out our application. I'm going to go and make sure
it's all good. Yeah.
But for the extra little time just to protect our owner's place.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah. Honestly, that's definitely something to consider for the future.
For sure. Give it a look, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Haze. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Now you sent in, because I asked you if you had any questions that you get sent in. You said, will I get more money for the furnished rental?
Yeah, this is something that we've talked about so much, but we'll talk about it again. Get these comments all the time. Yeah, it really depends, but most of the time, absolutely not. Yeah. If you're looking for a long-term tenant, a 1-year lease that goes month to month afterwards, and you've got a crappy old couch, a 32-inch television on a crappy old IKEA TV stand, and then a bed that nobody wants, and it's still in the unit, it's just detracting from the price, honestly. Absolutely. People do not want to sleep in somebody else's bed. They do not want to watch TV on the 32-inch television from 10 years ago that you just kept and you're too lazy to throw out. 99% of the time, if somebody has a furnished property, I just know it's because no offense, they're just being lazy or don't want to spend the money to just throw the stuff out and just get rid of it. They're not going to attract better tenants. No. They're going to attract more transient tenants, probably. We actually did, a colleague of mine did, we did a furnished rental. Mm-hmm. Furnishings were actually kind of nice. They did kind of fit with the unit. Yeah. I did agree on that. And we rented it to somebody. And then it was just a tenant placement. And the owner just called us again and said, hey, it's been a year. The tenant just moved out. Yep. And I thought, she probably moved out because it's furnished, right? If it was unfurnished, and we would probably have attracted somebody who was wanting to stay longer.
Yeah,
and now sometimes you might think, oh, great, the tenant moved out after a year. I'm sure you jacked up the rent. Actually, no. We started the rent at the same rent as we rented it for last year, noting that she would have been able to increase the rent. So we're already down by a little bit. And I'm not sure if we've rented it yet. But my point being, it's not always good to have this turnover of tenants. No. And to be honest, in my opinion, it probably contributed to the fact that it was furnished, and you're going to attract somebody who's not interested in staying longer.
And I find also that the furnished ones are a little bit more difficult to rent in a lot of cases.
Way more difficult.
I have one furnished unit that we're trying to get rented, and I've been having a hell of a time trying to get this one to go. We've rented it multiple times. Like, this isn't there, but right now we're just in that slow market.
Yeah.
And I think that having the furnishings might be a little bit of a detractor because people own stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm wondering.
Yeah,
if we should unfurnish it.
I always tell clients, I say, look, if you've got furniture in there right now, let's not just get rid of it right away. Let's not just throw it all out, but let's advertise as unfurnished / furnished or whatever.
Yeah.
Same price. We're not doing different prices for furnished versus unfurnished.
Yeah.
Just whatever the price is. If they want to keep some of the furniture, which will save you a little bit of money by not having to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or if they want it unfurnished, we'll just spend the money and get rid of it. Yeah, and that's just, you got to be flexible, right?
Well, then the junk removal is not that expensive.
No.
Like, it really is.
Like $400 or something to remove like all the stuff that's in the, if there's a ton of stuff, bed frame, mattress, all this stuff, couch, or if the owner really wants to, they can put it on Facebook Marketplace and have people take it away
and ghost them.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
Yeah. So I would definitely almost always recommend unfurnishing the place, or at least being flexible. I always tell owners, I say, look, if you have an unfurnished property, everybody who walks into the unit, they just have to like the unit.
Yeah.
If you have a furnished property, they have to like the unit, and then they also have to like your furniture.
Yeah. It's an extra moving gear.
There's more. It's another layer in there that is could be a possible deterrent, right? They might say, oh, I love this unit so much, but absolutely hate the couch. I will never sit on that couch ever. and that could be the deciding factor between getting a good tenant or not.
Absolutely. So. And you just reminded me actually of the utilities. We're talking about the split. One of the questions I get asked all the time is about including utilities. And I'm going to, on the record, point blank, no.
Yeah.
Do not include utilities.
Yeah.
Because if it's free electricity, why would I turn off my lights?
Yeah.
Why would I not just start mining Bitcoin? It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
So for any of the DIYs that are thinking to include utilities, I highly would recommend you do not.
Yeah, if you really are set on including BC Hydro or something like that, you can set a cap on it. Say, hey, if it goes over $75 a month or $50 a month or whatever it is, then the tenant will pay the difference. But then you're, contacting the tenant all the time to get that extra $13 because they went over. It's just not worth it. Just make the tenant pay for it.
Exactly right. And I mean, it's normal. People expect to have to pay an electrical bill. That's a normal. Everyday thing.
The only time that ever makes sense is if the property is fully furnished, turnkey for like a month or two, like a 3-month rental or something like that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or Airbnb, obviously, stuff like that. But
does Airbnb still exist?
Yeah. I think it does. I think it does a little bit, but probably been cut down a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. But it didn't change that much. It's kind of funny, those new rules that they brought in didn't really change. Everyone thought that it's going to be, there's going to be so many more rentals. And not really. It didn't. I don't think it had as big of an effect as they thought it was going to have.
No, maybe it'll take a couple of years for them to really ramp up the enforcement.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. We'll see. But definitely utilities, including it is pretty pointless.
Yeah.
Because realistically, you're going to include those utilities and then you're going to increase the price for it. Mm-hmm. And then the higher the sticker price, the fewer people are going to click on your advertisement. If you say, it's a one bed and I'm renting it for $3,200, but I'm including Netflix.
It's like
Great.
$20 extra.
Great. Like, it really works for those short-term rentals for furnished stuff, but like we've just spent the last 10 minutes talking about, don't do furnished stuff.
Don't do furnished. Don't include your utilities.
Don't include the utilities.
It also makes your life a lot easier because in some of these landlord groups you see, they complain, the lady has moved her boyfriend in now. What should I do? I'm like, have they been paying on time and not causing you a ruckus? Say congratulations and carry on collecting your rent with your good tenant.
Yeah.
Like, why are you even worried about this?
Exactly.
Don't cause yourself trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. The simple is way easier for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we got through all of our questions there. Do you have anything burning that you need to get out into the ethos?
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a good amount of questions. I think people had some, they were definitely frequently asked ones.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly, I answer the phone and half the time it's somebody saying, hey, I have a furnished property and I'd like to rent it out for long term, but only for 1 year. And then I'd like to, have my 7th grandson move in afterwards. Okay, come on. Yeah, people ask a lot of the same questions, but it's good that we had an opportunity to answer them.
Yeah, for sure, man. So if anyone's trying to get a hold of you, how do they find you?
Go on VancouverRented.com. Our phone number's right there. Email's Peter@VancouverRentit. And feel free to reach out if you have any more questions to ask.
Wicked. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. If you've been watching this long, we really appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe. This has been Vancouver's Property Management and Investment Podcast.